Fantasy Football Tips Podcast with Mills, JP, Quigliano, and Cliff.
Hi, you're listening to FantasyFootballTips.co, the podcast in association with Premier Punt, the home of daily fantasy football betting. It's game week 4, and my name's Mills, and I'm joined this week on the podcast by Quigliano and JP. Hello, gents.
Hello there.
And it's Quigliano, I imagine you're basking in the glory of it was a podcast extra tip, wasn't it, that you gave us last week? And the Gary of the week, of course.
Well, obviously, yeah, I tipped... Just remind me what my tips were there, mate.
I think Eden Hazard was the one I was referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it, I predicted it. I say these things and they come true. That's why you're tuning into the podcast.
Indeed. Yeah. And JP, how was the week for you?
Not bad. I've learned from last week's podcast. I've now locked myself in a secluded room so I can't be disturbed. And in terms of the game week, not bad. I was expecting more from one or two players, but we did okay. Not bad.
I mean, just feedback on that for anyone that didn't listen last week. JP went to answer his door halfway through the podcast. In fact, we had a record number of thumbs downs on YouTube last week, and I'm putting them all down to you, JP. So I think we had 3 or 4.
Wow, I feel responsible.
So, apologies, maybe.
Apologies to those 3 or 4 that were particularly frustrated.
And a word on Cliff. No sign of Cliff yet, Quigliano.
No, we're starting to get worried. Family are starting to just put up posters around the local area. They're just trying to do a find Cliff page. We're trying to get his face on a milk carton, but at the minute we're in negotiations with the milk suppliers saying that that's going to affect sales for them massively if they put a hideous creature on there. So, Cliff, if you're out there, just contact someone. Let us know you're safe. All right.
Okay, so gents, we're in the midst of an international break, and as we record this, it's transfer deadline day. So things could change a little bit by the end of today. But before we kind of get too far into the podcast, let's just have a word on Aguero. Obviously, the infamous elbow with Winston Reid at the weekend. He's been charged, so he's likely to miss the 3 games. First thoughts on that from a fantasy football point of view?
I mean, yeah, he probably had it come in. The only bonus really for me is one of those games is a League Cup. So if I considered keeping him in, he's serving a 2-game fantasy football ban in effect. Mm-hmm. I think there's too much money tied up in him to keep him, personally. I think there's going to be a crash sale as well. I think a lot of people are just going to get rid. So I think, like, in terms of prices, he may be dropping. So if you're going to get rid, you might want to get rid early. But ultimately, we've said it from the start, you have to have him in your team. So whatever you do, you have to leave yourself scope to get him back in. And I think that's critical for whatever decisions are made.
JP?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got to go. You can't have that much money not playing. But at the same time, I'm literally just repeating what Quigliano's saying here, aren't I? So I'm going to stop that. Yeah, I agree with Quigliano.
You are repeating him with a much worse connection.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I mean, yeah, just to kind of put that into perspective in terms of what Quigliano was saying, I think almost 100,000 people have dropped him already. That increase, I think it was 50,000 yesterday, and it's going to go over 100,000 today. So his price will drop back down to 13 mil today. So maybe if you paid 13.1, get him out today. If you pay 13, he's not got quite such a rush, but probably by the end of this week, he's going to drop below the 13 million. So yeah, I think I agree with you, Quigliano and JP. It's too much money to be tied up on the bench. But again, we've always said it, he needs to be in your team.
I think a popular thing will be drop him down, allow yourself to get Sanchez, and then you potentially can get yourself, depending on who you're replacing, somebody for Sanchez, you could still hold on to a reasonable striker in the form of like Rooney, Costa, Benteke, Lukaku, those type players. So then you're just doing like a kind of a double swap there and getting a decent midfielder in to replace him.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good. And we're going to discuss that a little bit more in Podcast Extra later on, and we'll be discussing, be discussing the wild card then as well. So without further ado, Quigliano, I was very impressed with your tips last week. Let's get straight into the Gary of the Week for game week 4, which isn't until September the 10th, let's remember.
I'm looking at a bit of form here and a bit of quality to the player. So I almost want to duplicate my decision to say Hazard last week, because I think a game against Swansea, who I don't think are particularly good, is a strong fixture for Hazard. But I'm going to lean towards the home fixture advantage of Alexis Sanchez facing a Southampton team that don't really look that convincing to me. Think he's got the quality. I think Ozil, as I said last week, unlocks a few doors for him as well. So I'm putting in Sanchez as the guaranteed performer, you must-have player this week.
Like it. And it looks like Arsenal are getting back to where they need to be. They sort of stuttered into the season, didn't they? But certainly the return of Ozil has helped. So moving on, where is the Xabi going this week?
So the long shot. Last week, tipped Benteke, and it would have been a very long shot as Palace did nothing. But I'm predicting the return to form of Harry Kane. Game week 4, we'll see Harry Kane return to goal-scoring form. It's not the easiest fixture against Stoke, but I think Spurs are a quality team. I think it's just a matter of time, and I think his time starts this week. So if you want to get in early on that, put yourself Harry Kane in it. It is a long shot, however.
Okay, and the Delia.
Well, his compatriot, where are you? Christian Eriksen. At the minute, Lamela is the only talking point in that Spurs team. And I think Eriksen is the world-class player in that midfield, and he needs to show himself. So where are you? Let's be having you. Christian Eriksen.
Okay, I like it. JP, thoughts on that?
Good tips. Like them.
Okay, thanks for the input there, JP.
No worries.
Who sounds like he's calling in from the moon. Okay, so let's go on to the side tips then, gents.
So some rapid-fire side tips from me. Mane is looking lethal. I mean, dodged a few bullets last week. Well, he dodged a bullet himself, apparently. He could have got himself sent off. But he is looking dangerous in that Liverpool squad. And I think he's going to be an explosive player and somebody to watch. So Mane, get himself in. There's a fixture warning with this one, but Sterling, reborn under Pep, is somebody that potentially might need to be going in that team at the minute, especially if you're losing your Man City coverage and getting rid of Aguero. What better way to maybe have a goal-scoring threat in Man City than with Sterling? The fixture warning is that they're playing Man United, though. A lot of teams doubling up on Man United defenders at the minute, going against Quigliano, having De Gea and Shaw or Bailey in there. So, interesting one, that. I also think there's going to be a battle of the cheap strikers between Gray and Hernandez in that Burnley-Hull game. And I think a side tip there is to get yourself one of those. Even though Hull started well, I think Burnley are probably the more complete outfit. So I'd probably lean towards Gray on that one. I think Payet is somebody that now needs to be maybe going in. Bit of a price drop for you. A better fixture against Watford. I know they've not started the season well, but when Payet starts playing for West Ham, I think they will become a different team as well. So possibly the weekend to put him in your team. I think you can't ignore Hazard and Costa. Looking lethal, and if you're getting rid of Aguero, Costa's a nice replacement. And finally, it's Lukaku. I mean, the guy has to start scoring soon. So I'm putting him in against a struggling Sunderland team. There you go. There's your side tips wrapped up quite quick this week.
I like that, Quigliano, and I think the fans will appreciate a little less waffle this week and a few more tips. So, JP, do you have anything to add to that?
One or two players, but generally really good tips. Diamande of Hull. I think he's 4.6 million. He's really, really cheap. He could be a nice third choice striker.
Potentially for a reason, do you think, JP?
I mean, I think he's already got something like 13 points, so he's actually scoring quite well.
Is this a bit biased because you put him in your team last week, didn't you?
I did.
And how many points did he get you?
Not many, because he was on my bench. But
right.
Had he have started, he would have got some points. But anyway, thank you for ruining my one and only tip there. No. I was gonna say. Did you say Lamela is one of your side tips?
I didn't know.
I would say Lamela is a good shout. I think he looks good. Antonio, West Ham. He's just got an England call up. Could be a new sign of confidence for him.
It's just where he plays. That's what worries me with him. I never know where he's going to play.
Yeah, that is true. But again, I like him as a player. A fairly easy fixture. So maybe a little side tip there if you're looking for someone kind of medium price in your midfield. That's about it. I haven't got much more to contribute, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks, JP. I mean,
standard stuff.
Standard.
I mean, I tell you one more, and it just depends. I'll probably wait to see how he hits the ground running. But I think Chadley's move to West Brom potentially is a good signing. Actually, what considering I'm a Wolves fan, I like the way West Brom are kind of handling themselves at the minute in the transfer market. I think they could have a better season this season. So if Chadley does hit the ground running, I think at 6.4 million is a definite option to have.
Well, Millsy, could I add one more player in?
Of course you can.
You're asking for permission, but yeah. So that's
I know. Well, I'm polite. Hearing strong rumours that Bonnie is going to be going to Stoke.
Well, I'm gonna shut you down there, JP, because we're gonna come back onto this in a minute. We're gonna have a very quick interlude, and then we're gonna be back in with some of the transfer movers and the potential for that in your fantasy Premier League team. So we're back just after this.
The FantasyFootballTips.co podcast. In association with PremierPunt.com.
Okay, JP, I do apologise for shutting you down there, but let's go back to what were you saying on Wilfried Bonny?
Yeah, rumours are he's having a medical at Stoke. I think the likelihood is he will make the move today. I think he could be an amazing player to put in your team. I know it's a little bit of a risk, but if he goes to Stoke, he's going to be their star man. He's going to start every game week in, week out. I think he's a quality player. I think Stoke look pretty good. They're solid. I could see him getting a lot of goals. So I'm going to be keeping my ears to the ground. And if he does make that move, I will be putting him in as my third choice striker for sure.
Okay, interesting. I mean, he's in there at 7.3, which is probably quite a lot considering the game time he's been afforded at Man City. Sort of comparable with players like Christian Benteke. So you prefer Bonny over Benteke?
Definitely.
Stoke. I think Stoke look a better footballing team as well. I mean, Crystal Palace are just doing nothing up front, are they? So
absolutely.
And I do agree with that. I think that's a decent shout. I mean, Bonny, when he was at Swansea, he was a mainstay of many FPL teams.
Absolutely. He's a good player. Very strong.
Okay.
I mean, also somebody, I think Louis Remy going to Palace is... I mean, he's already down in their Palace squad now, so I'm taking that move as already done and dusted. At 6.4 million. I think Remy, I mean, I've currently got Shane Long in my team at 6.4, and I think based on his start to the season, I would much rather have Remy in at 6.4. I think the attacking options are opening up, and this transfer deadline's helping that happen. And I think we need to remember there's a reason why Man City did pay, 30 odd million for Bonny, and that's because he can get goals. And he got them in a Swansea team, so put him in Stoke, and I think JP is right. He's a good option.
Absolutely. And then the other one that's interesting is the Jack Wilshere one. He's definitely going to go somewhere today on loan for the season. And again, Palace is the one that's mentioned. Bournemouth is the other. If Palace get Wilshere, does that then open up the options up front a little bit more? They've got Townsend in there as well. That essentially they've actually got quite a good squad. They've just stuttered into the season a little bit, but
they finished the season dreadfully as well. It's always forgiven because Pardew got into the FA Cup final, but his whole excuse for losing every game or just picking up the odd point here and there was, the lads have got their eyes on the final. How can you not have your eye on the final? Well, actually, they've done nothing for a long period of time. They're midfield heavy, very heavy. I think he could be facing the chop if he doesn't turn that around soon.
I agree.
But they have now got the players that should be able to turn
absolutely.
that around.
I mean, in terms of the players he's bringing in, it's a super job. Although maybe that's more down to the chairman. But going back to Jack Wilshere, 5.9 million as a cheap midfielder, is that an option? He's likely to, he's going to play every game, isn't he?
He's not notorious for goals. He normally scores more in an England shirt than he does in an Arsenal shirt. And is 5.9 that cheap? It depends whether you class him as one of your main midfielders or whether it's just like your fourth just so you can have Aguero and Ibrahimovic. I'm not sure whether that's cheap enough, but undoubted talent.
Okay. Anything else that has taken your eye in the window, or in terms of movers?
Yes, this one excites me big time, Millsy.
Okay, JP. I mean, again, calling in from on a medium wave. If you just tuned in, this is a podcast. This is should be supreme audio digital quality, but JP is calling on through medium wave. Go on, JP.
Anyway, Moussa Sissoko has been rumoured with a move to Tottenham.
Yeah, it looks like it's happening.
30 million. Now, I know most people would have watched the Euros. He was phenomenal. He was one of the strong, in my opinion, one of the best players in the tournament. Very, very strong player, good midfielder. I think if he was to go to Tottenham, he'd go straight into that squad. I think he'd probably play attacking mid somewhere behind Harry Kane. I could see him. I'm not sure how much he would cost in terms of price on there. What do you think, Millsy?
I don't know. What was he last season?
I think if he signs for 30 odd, I can see him going in at least 8.
Yeah, 7 or 8.
I think eight could be a good price for him. I think he could be good. Keep your ears to the ground, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a superb Euros. I mean, there was talk of him coming to teams like Real Madrid and all of that, wasn't there? Although the latest I'm reading is that Spurs have cooled their interest a little bit, so watch this space on that. But, it's one of those days, isn't it? Anything can happen. So, gents, it's a funny one this week because we're doing this podcast so far in advance. But I think the tips in terms of the side tips and the Gary, I don't see that changing. Whatever happens really in the transfer window today, I don't see that changing. So I think that's short and sweet. We're going to go into podcast extra in a minute. Is there anything that you guys want to say to the standard members?
I think
apart from obviously get a premium membership, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're going to be discussing wildcard, and I think that's ultimately what you're going to need to be deciding. We're at game week 4. Some people play for this international break to play the wildcard to try and get any player that's going down in price they can get rid of, and sign any player that's going up in price and try and reap the rewards of extra money. You've got to decide whether you're going to be playing yours this week and try and steal a yard on your competitors. But just bear that in mind. If you do have injury problems down the line, or you're taking in Aguero and you're using your wildcard, what are you going to do to fix that team later on in the season, obviously before you get your second one in January? Big decisions to be made this week.
Okay. JP?
Also, captain choices. I think there's a lot of kind of the bigger players are doing really well at the moment, so it's making that captain choice actually a little bit more tricky. There's probably, like this weekend, for example, there's probably 3 or 4 choices you could have gone with. So we're going to be discussing those, so you'd be a fool not to listen.
Okay, and on that, we will say goodbye to the cheapies and we will go deep into podcast extra.
The Fantasy Football Tips Podcast with Mills, JP, Quigliano, and Cliff.